Good morning, everybody. It's your girl, Brittany Charity, and welcome back to Saturday morning Storytime. I've been feeling positive this morning, and I found this old little song that I'm excited to sing to you today. You got to accentuate the positive, eliminate the negative, latch on to the affirmative, and don't mess with Mr. Inbetween. You got to spread joy up to the maximum, bring gloom down to the minimum. Have faith or pandemonium is liable to walk upon the scene. To illustrate my last remark, Jonah in the whale, Noah in the ark. What did they do? Oh, just when everything looked so dark. You gotta accentuate the positive, eliminate the negative, latch on to the affirmative, and don't mess with Mr. Inbetween. You gotta spread joy up to the maximum, bring that gloom down to the minimum. Have faith or pandemonium, liable to walk across the scene, and don't mess with Mr. Inbetween. What a cute little one that I never really heard before until recently, and I have a feeling I won't be able to stop singing it. But thanks for joining me, guys. Today I'm going to be singing, reading a story. It's actually a speech called Make Good Art Speech. Yes, the Make Good Art Speech, also known as the Make Great Mistakes speech, because he talks about it in here. And it's a speech he gave to a graduating class in 2012 from an art university. I forget which one. And it's just so great and so well put. And for all of us artists and rebels and envelope pushers out there, it's just something really good to have in your back pocket, the perspective that he gives, the encouragement that he gives. I actually found this when I was in journalism reporting for the Miami Herald, and I was just so blessed to have stumbled upon it because it was exactly the words and inspiration I needed at that time. And this little book has actually been with me for a very long time. So I'm going to take my time here this morning and actually read most of it. It's very short, so it won't take that long, but it will take longer than average story time. Let's jump right in. I'm going to skip the introductions and just start right here. He says, I didn't have a career. I just did the next thing on my list. So I thought I'd tell you everything I wish I'd known starting out, and a few things that, looking back on it, I suppose that I did know, and that I would also give you the best piece of advice I'd ever got, which I completely failed to follow. First of all, when you start out on a career in the arts, you have no idea what you're doing. This is great. People who know what they are doing, know the rules, and know what is possible and impossible. You do not, and you should not. The rules on what is possible and impossible in the arts were made by people who had not tested the bounds of the possible by going beyond them. And you can. If you don't know it's impossible, it's easier to do. And because nobody's done it before, they haven't made up rules to stop anyone from doing it again. Yet. Secondly, if you have an idea of what you want to make, what you were put here to do, then just go and do that. And that's much harder than it sounds, and sometimes in the end, so much easier than you might imagine. Because normally, there are things you have to do before you can get to the place you want to be. I wanted to write comics and novels and stories and films, so I became a journalist, because journalists are allowed to ask questions and to simply go and find out how the world works. And besides, to do those things I needed to write, and to write well, and I was being paid to learn how to write economically, crisply, sometimes under adverse conditions, and on time. Sometimes the way to do what you hope to do will be clear-cut, and sometimes it will be almost impossible to decide whether or not you are doing the correct thing, because you'll have to balance your goals and hopes with feeding yourself, paying debts, finding work, settling for what you can get. Something that worked for me was imagining that where I wanted to be, like an author, primarily of fiction, making good books, making good comics, and supporting myself through my words, was a mountain. A distant mountain, my goal. And I knew that as long as I kept walking towards the mountain, I would be all right. And when I truly was not sure what to do, I could stop and think about whether it was taking me towards or away from the mountain. I said no to editorial jobs on magazines, proper jobs that would have paid proper money, because I knew that, attractive though they were, for me they would have been walking away from the mountain. And if those job offers had come along earlier, I might have taken them because they still would have been closer to the mountain than I was at that time. But I learned to write by writing. I tended to do anything as long as it felt like an adventure, and to stop when it felt like work, which meant that life did not feel like work. Thirdly, when you start off, you have to deal with the problems of failure. You need to be thick-skinned to learn that not every project will survive. A freelance life, a life in the arts, is sometimes like putting messages in bottles on a desert island and hoping that someone will find one of your bottles and open it and read it, and put something in a bottle that will wash its way back to you, like appreciation or a commission or money or love. And you have to accept that you may put out 100 things for every bottle that winds up coming back. The problems of failure are problems of discouragement, of hopelessness, of hunger. You want everything to happen and you want it now, and things go wrong. My first book was a piece of journalism I had done for the money, and which had already brought me an electric typewriter from the advance. Should have been a bestseller. It should have paid me a lot of money if the publisher hadn't gone into involuntary liquidation between the first print run selling out and the second printing, and before any royalties could be paid. It would have done. And I shrugged. And I still had my electric typewriter and enough money to pay the rent for a couple of months, and I decided that I would do my best in future not to write books just for the money. Because if you didn't get the money, then you didn't have anything. If I did work I was proud of, and I didn't get the money, at least I'd have the work. Every now and again, I forget that rule. And whenever I do, the universe kicks me hard and reminds me, I don't know that it's an issue for anybody but me, but it's true that nothing I did where the only reason for doing it was the money was ever worth it, except as bitter experience. Usually I didn't wind up getting the money either. The things I did because I was excited and wanted to see them exist in reality have never let me down, and I've never regretted the time I spent on any of them. The problems of failures are hard. The problems of success can be harder because nobody warns you about them. The first problem of any kind of even limited success is the unshakable conviction that you are getting away with something, and that at any moment now, they will discover you. It's imposter syndrome, something my wife Amanda christened the fraud police. In my case, I was convinced that there would be a knock on the door and a man with a clipboard. I don't know why he carried a clipboard in my head, but he did. He would be there to tell me it was all over and they had caught up with me, and now I would have to go and get a real job, one that didn't consist of making things up and writing them down and reading books I wanted to read. And then I would go away quietly and get the kind of job where you don't have to make things up anymore. The problems of success, they're real, and with luck, you'll experience them. The point where you stop saying yes to everything because now the bottles you threw in the ocean are all coming back, and you have to learn to say no. I watched my peers and my friends and the ones who were older than me and watched how miserable some of them were. I'd listened to them telling me that they couldn't envisage a world where they did what they had always wanted to do anymore, because now they had to earn a certain amount of money every month just to keep where they were. They couldn't go and do the things that mattered, and that they had and what they'd really wanted to do. And that seemed as big a tragedy as any problem of failure. And after that, the biggest problem of success is that the world conspires to stop you doing the thing that you do because you are successful. There was a day when I looked up and realized that I had become someone who professionally replied to emails and who wrote as a hobby. I started answering fewer emails, and I was relieved to find I was writing much more. Fourthly, I hope you'll make mistakes. If you're making mistakes, it means you're out there doing something, and mistakes in themselves can be useful. I once misspelled Caroline in a letter, transposing the A to an O, and I thought Coraline looks like a real name. But remember that whatever discipline you are in, whether you are a musician or a photographer, a fine artist, a cartoonist, a writer, dancer, designer, whatever it is you do, you have one thing that's unique. You have the ability to make art. And for me, and for so many of the people I have known, that's been a lifesaver. The ultimate lifesaver. It gets you through good times, and it gets you through the other ones too. Life is sometimes hard. Things go wrong in life and in love, and in business and in friendship and in health and in all the other ways that life can go wrong. And when things get tough, this is what you should do. Make good art. I'm serious. That's where I'm going to leave it. Thanks for hanging out with me today, guys. I hope that was super inspiring. I love you. Thanks for being here. Go out there and make good art and make great mistakes, and I'll see you next week.